Hi, everybody, and welcome to our August Compassion Chat. My name is Susan Marshall. I am the author of Mom's Gone Missing, When a Parent's Changing Life Upends Yours, and your host for these monthly Compassion Chats. We meet the fourth Tuesday of each month at 6 o'clock Central. And we designed this program, we started it in March, because when I was in the shoes of caretaking both of my parents, I had no clue where all of these wonderful people have been that I've met since the book came out a year ago. So we want to bring caregivers together, obviously, to talk about things that we're struggling with right now in a casual format. You don't have to do homework. You don't have to get dressed up. Guys, you don't have to shave. Just drop in, join us, and truly it is a chat. We bring resources, as I mentioned, who are not only really well qualified and gifted in the work that they do, but who have such a heart, not only for the people that they help us care for, but for all of us as caregivers. This session is being recorded, so I would ask you to mute while we're having the chat with Barbara. If you want to not be present, certainly leave your camera off. That's fine too. We will open it up at the end for Q&A. So obviously, if you have a question, we would ask you to unmute before you obviously try to speak. So our guest tonight, I am so pleased to introduce, is Barbara Bousted. Barbara is one of those fabulous people I met after Mom's Gone Missing came out. And the more I learn about Barbara, the more just amazed I am at who she is and how she is. Barbara is a daily money manager who founded Mary's Daughter. There's a story behind that. She's a clinical social worker, a dementia-friendly trainer and consultant, and an author. Her book is From 50 to Fabulous. It is absolutely delightful. So Barbara, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here, Susan. It's a treat, it really is.
For us as well. We like to start each of these chats kind of getting to know the individual a little bit. So if you could give us just kind of a brief summary of your story and how you came to do the work that you do.
Well, brief and brevity don't go together for me with my chattiness. So I will do the best I can because we have a time frame. So I love those. They really help me kind of keep it together. And then I let it spill out. But my story really is, I've been blessed to be here for 7 decades. So I just turned 70 on August 10th.
Come on.
Yeah, I did. And I rocket to the rope with that. I say that with just all appreciation and gratitude because my brothers didn't live past 71. My mom lived till 93. My dad died at 57. So I am, and then I have a sister who's a year younger. So wasn't sure I'd get to 70 just because of the family situation. My youngest brother died when he was 47 of alcoholism. And so it's just of the 5 of us, 3 brothers and my sister, it's just my sister and I remaining. Parents are all passed away. But I am happy to be here. And I think that just in terms of how I'm here today, I think about my mission. My mission in life really is about helping. And anyway, anyhow, with anybody. And so that's been sort of my story when I started social work. And that was after graduating in 1975 from George Williams College in Downers Grove. I have a long story in terms of the things I did in high school and college with not being sure what I wanted to do and who I wanted to be, but it was always with the idea that I would be a helper. And that to me, I didn't quite know exactly what they called it, but it turned out to be social work. And
and Barbara, you write about this in your book. And
yes.
What I loved about it is that you share that uncertainty so authentically. It's kind of like, I don't know, what am I supposed to be doing here? And some of the things that you experience, right? Some of the episodes, if we can say it that way. So thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, I love that because, so yeah, growing up and being with my parents were divorced. There was abuse going on in my family. I didn't see a lot of it because I was reading or under a table. I heard about some of that later. My father moved to Chicago when I would visit. Mom was in Rockford. She came up from Chattanooga. They both came from Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I would go back to Chattanooga to visit my dad, and she was in Rockford. But after going to college, I was the first to go to college. After some bumps along the way, some major bumps, I found myself at George Williams College, and it was a perfect fit, a smaller school, focused on social work. And for some people, they know about it as the jock school, or working with physical education and going into the recreation field. But I loved it. I thoroughly enjoyed it and went on for my master's degree and have been working in the field of social work for 40 some years. In 2011, while I was still working in my job, and I was at Journey Mental Health Center, I said, I'll be retiring, and I was helping my mom in Rockford with some of her care needs. My sister was her primary, my sister's name is Bunny. She was a primary hands-on caregiver. But I would come down from Madison to help out and to do, to support her. I had no idea how much work caregiving is until I saw what she did. When she would rarely go anywhere, but when she went away for a couple of days and I had to step in, oh my gosh. I mean, I remember I was there like for 4 days. I didn't take a shower. I remember thinking once, I didn't want to get up. I love my mom dearly. I loved her dearly. Still do. But I mean, it was part of that. She's passed away now. But I remember being awake at maybe 5 or 5:30. I needed to go to the bathroom and I didn't want to get up because if she heard me, she would call me because she was bedridden. And then I would start the day with her. And I would kind of get on my sister because, give mom what she needs, take care of her. My sister was saying, mom again. And I would think to myself, oh my gosh, I'm doing this for 4 days. She's been doing it for years, around 10 to be exact. Oh, wow. I did not appreciate fully what that was like.
Barbara, that is so powerful. And that's really one of the driving factors for doing these chats. Mm-hmm. Because when you're in the caregiving role, you just do what you have to do. And people watching from the outside often go, oh, really? It's not that big a deal, right? Or how come you didn't do this? Or why didn't you do that faster? Or why did you do this instead of, and so I love that you shared that. It is so true for so many. And I think one of the key reasons people end up feeling so isolated.
I can understand that. I actually live in New Jersey. I was in Illinois, moved to New Jersey for 20 years. So I was actually, my mom would come out and stay with me when she was able, when she was ambulatory or when she was mobile. And she would come out and, when she was in her 60s and early 70s and visit, and she didn't drive. She wouldn't fly. So I would go get her and she would stay 3 months, 6 months, a year. It was great. My kids had grandma and it was fun, fantastic. But once she became less able to do that and needed to stay in Rockford, well, I decided when I was going to move, I needed to be within an hour because I realized my sister needed that support. But I could never do it quite like my sister. The primary caregiver, it's amazing because they know so well and so intuitively what to do that the secondary person, it's really a hard place to be because you don't want to interfere with what has been the routine. But if you're called upon to, be involved, then you don't quite know when you're stepping on toes or when you're not. And there's no real guidelines about that.
No, and in fact,
yeah,
that is shared. I can't speak for every primary caregiver, mm-hmm. but that certainly was those emotions right there. The uncertainty, the not sure how I've got this. It may appear that the primary caregiver has that nailed. Yeah, I'm going to say oftentimes, maybe not quite so much. So, but that's what's so rich about these conversations is we share that sense of uncertainty and oftentimes tremendous inadequacy. I want to move just to the topic of money, though.
Yes.
If there is anything more prone with conflict, more personal, right? And Mom used to say, you know what? It's my money. It's none of your business.
Mhm.
And yet we had to certainly take over the bill paying as an example.
Yeah.
How in the world did you get from social work to money managing?
Well, I've always enjoyed keeping a budget, and even if I had very little money, figuring out how to use it wisely, saving, and that just has been with me for a while. My sister, on the other hand, she's someone that was so involved with the caregiving, she couldn't take time to do opening the mail, getting all the bills paid. And I'm coming in as a secondary person saying, you know, well, why is the creditors calling? Why is this happening? I understood once I stepped in her shoes for a minute. I could barely take a shower, like I said. And so I realized, well, what can I do that wouldn't tread upon the good work she's doing and is really more in my, wheelhouse? And balancing a budget, taking care of bills, calling creditors, advocating is all of the things I love to do. And so my mom and I talked, and I said, how about if I don't I'll care for you when it's needed. I'm here, and I'll be that person. But maybe if I just do things you might want, like if you want cards for the kids, grandkids, I'll make them out and we'll put money in them like you would do, but you can't write. And my sister didn't have time for that. So I would do that. And then she would say, well, can you call? I have this creditor calling and just tell them I'm not home or don't answer the phone. I said, well, that doesn't sound like it would be the best way to handle it. So I started advocating, like Sears, I remember, they said, well, she owes $700. I said, well, she's, almost 90. If we put we'll come up with something she can afford. $10 a month. And they said, what? I said, yeah, I'm sure I'll make sure that you get $10 a month. They said, well, we'll just waive it. And then I realized, oh my gosh, if they would do it, I can do that for others. And it wasn't that my mom didn't want to pay. It was that she just didn't have the wherewithal. And so what I said was, if we got rid of some of your debt, through waiving some of it or reducing some of it, how would you feel? She said, oh, so relieved. And bingo, that's when I realized that was something I could do. I could do that. My sister didn't want to do that. And we can sort of stay in our lane. And then I realized, well, okay, Mom, I'll do this, but I wonder, what do you think about it? And she said, who else would do it if you weren't here? And I go, well, let me look into that. And I didn't know anybody or anything. So I started my business. I said, I'm going to be an advocate. And they called it a geriatric care manager. Now they're calling aging life care professional. And I said, but I don't want to do the care managing. I just want to do the slice where I'm paying the bills and advocating. And so I had a business coach, because one of the things I'm good at, if I don't know something, I know how to find it. I'll look for it, I'll search. And she said, Barbara, you need to research this. You started a business, but you have no clue of what you're doing. I said, this is true. Now, I was 60 years old when I started my business. It was August 1st, 2011. And I was so excited because I still was working, but I thought this new venture, I love new stuff. I love being able to, and even in my social work career, I would find a way to put my own spin on something. I would get a job and it's like, I don't want just a regular job. I would do it in a different way. I would come up with different hours. I would do it, so for me, the idea of having this, money manager job, but I didn't know what to call it. She said, you need to research and find out who does this. And I went to the School of Business and got a business coach, again, at no charge, because I'm very frugal. And my business coach said, Barbara, you need to look into this and see who's doing it. And then I found the American Association of Daily Money Managers. I got hooked up with them, went to the conference. I felt like I had found my people. All these people like paying bills, and people said, but you're a social worker. Half of the folks in the Adam were social workers. Well, a quarter. They were people who liked working with money and realized this was so much this was so needed. that even if you did all the emotional stuff for the person, the care management, if their money was all askew, they were going to have problems. So if you can work with them around the money and that actually be what you focused on, the other things would come usually with other people. You can bring in a team. And that's what I do now with my clients. And I started in 2011 and I had my first client in 2012. And then I'll be retiring from this at the end of this year.
Oh, fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
thank you again for doing the work. I want to touch on, you talked about the emotional stuff and you do stuff. Well, we all know that money is far more than numbers in an account or numbers on paper.
Yes.
And in Mom's case, what I came to appreciate, having worked with her the 7 months that she was here, is that money represented three things to her. One is identity. Her dad left the family when she was a small girl. I don't think she ever really got over that.
Yeah.
So identity was key. Independence was enormous for her, represented by money, and safety. And one of the things that she used to ask me after we moved her to Wisconsin was, can I walk to the bank? Because when she lived in Arizona, she had an independent apartment. She could literally walk out the front door of the community, go across the parking lot, and she was at the bank. She didn't need to do banking stuff, but it was for her the access to her finances equated to safety, identity, and independence for her. Can you talk a little bit about what you see in the clients that you've worked with?
Oh, my goodness. It is huge when the ability to take care of their own finances, they start realizing that. And clients hold on to this. They hold on to it even when they're not writing correct checks correctly. They are sending bills to the wrong places, and they are really at risk for being scammed. And then they're embarrassed because if they are scammed, it's huge, because it's like, if my children find out about this, they are going to take my money away from me. And then what do I do?
And I think that is exactly the sentiment. They're going to take my money away. They're going to prevent me from having access. How do you advise caregivers to start a conversation, much less make movement toward setting up the bill pays?
Yeah.
Oh, what happened here? And actually managing the things that you manage in terms of bills, in terms of charitable contributions, right? That's a huge thing. And we're going to talk about scams in just a little bit. But what advice do you have?
Start small with the conversation. And by that, I just mean maybe talk about what you yourself are doing with your money. If money hasn't been a topic that's been discussed ever, and that is true for a lot of families, sometimes it's good to have another party as part of that, a trusted person. Sometimes it is the estate attorney, the financial advisor, or someone that the person knows that they trust. And we're not talking money at those conversations. We're just talking in general about some ideas about what you can do over time. And then not specifically, but just being able to start saying, what I'm planning to do is open up an account and maybe create a trust for my children, or a trust for whatever, in order to do whatever that person needs to do, the adult child I need. And then it's like, well, I'm just wondering, Mom, what are you thinking? Is that something that is of interest to you? I don't want to talk about that.
None of your business. Don't worry about it.
And it's like, well, it's going to be my business if something were to happen to you. And I want to do everything in my power to make sure that what I do is what you want. And what I have found is if you can tie in, and sometimes you have to say it in different ways, like, and maybe the conversation can happen at that particular time because they're just not ready. So you broach it again with, we were talking a little bit about money, and I know it's hard to talk about that. So let's maybe talk about, a Christmas budget, or if you don't celebrate that, maybe we'll talk about vacations and how much do you think you know, it's going to cost for vacation this year? And people say, well, I think it's, and then sometimes those little ways, just doing things that take it off the, what about my money? It's helpful. I have found though that sometimes you do need to have another person come in, someone that's a trusted person. For some people, it's their, you know, their temple or their synagogue or their church, or someone who can say, in fact, with one person, she said, I want to contribute, you know, to my religious institution. I want to make sure that they get a certain amount. They were the ones that said, you know, based on what it seems like your income is, what you're wanting to leave is way more than you can afford. I'm not kidding. You get them on board. You say, and you do so many good things. We believe that you have already contributed a great deal to us. And so what you're planning on doing, let's look at that as in a smaller way. And we still feel as valued. I mean, and the person, oh, really? But she didn't think that she would be doing her part. So understanding a little bit about the emotional stuff, because I like what you say, Susan. If it's safety, it's like, what will keep you safe? For some people, it's knowing that they have $5,000 in their checking account. If they have any less than that, they feel like, okay, I don't have enough. So always having that is something that would be important. So kind of finding out what are the things that really mean something to the individual.
Yes, and I love your notion of having a trusted someone else. How do you manage that at a distance? The initial part of my caregiving journey with Mom, I was 1,900 miles away. I didn't know anybody at the bank. I didn't know her insurance. I take that back. I knew their financial advisor because he was still in Wisconsin, had been with them a long, long time. Mm-hmm. So he was an advocate in that sense. But what advice do you have, A, from a long distance perspective? And then B, when we moved Mom back to Wisconsin, we put her into a memory care home mm-hmm. where she literally had no need to have cash, mm-hmm. but she insisted on it. So mm-hmm. two very different questions, I guess, rolled in.
Well, the long distance question, finding what person or what institution. I mean, like now I have Adam, so I'm able to find someone who either works remotely or someone who's in the same city as my client. And so I'm able to find those folks, and because I know the work they do and I know their standards of practice and their ethics, I'm able to get that conversation going. And that's the beauty of, you know, I'm wanting more daily money managers because I think we need to have that profession accessible to any and everyone who needs that. And so that would be really important, though, to find. I know bankers who do that. I've had people from a Bank of Sun Prairie, Bank of Cross Plains reach out to me, and they love knowing about daily money managing because they want that service as part of what they offer. And we're trying to get more and more of that happening. But right now it is tough. I know CPAs who are very close to their clients are great people to talk with. They sometimes don't have the time, or oftentimes don't have the time during tax season, but separate from tax season, they're willing to make that investment if you explain what's needed. And then because they're doing taxes, they know what's going on. You know, they have a sense of, so they're not someone who's coming in cold. You know, that would be important.
Yeah, that's great advice. This notion of having access, as I mentioned earlier, mm-hmm. after we moved Mom, she wanted money in her room. She wanted money in her purse, in her possession. Now, on one hand, that's not a real great idea when they're in a facility like that. On the other, my sister, on hearing that, would say to her, Mom, you don't need money. Absolutely the wrong thing to say, because that felt like, as you said earlier, Barbara, you're taking mm-hmm. it away from me, right? Yeah. So do you have a couple of, here's what to say, and here are some things that may come naturally to you? Please don't say those.
You know, one of the things that I have found, I've been using the TrueLink card. It's a debit card, and it's wonderful because I can manage it. It's a card that you put money on from the bank account, and, you know, you set it up, and I can shut it down as quickly as so that the person can actually access cash with it, use it as a debit card. And it's been a wonderful tool. But I have a client who likes to have cash. The problem was the cash was disappearing. But it was worth it. It was worth it for her to be given the, I think I was giving her $40. And even if that disappeared, the fact that she had it in her wallet made her feel so much better. And then I had the TrueLink card, so if I couldn't get to her, I mean, she's, you know, not too far away, but if I couldn't get to her, they could go out and she could actually access money from the ATM. And that would be, I had it as a limit of $40. That helped immensely because I can shut it off at that. I didn't have to worry, and she could see it as cash, you know. But when I could be with her, I would give her $40, and then she would be okay with that. And then the other thing I was going to do with staff, like I said, I am able to be there. I'm able to go to her. But if I couldn't, I would work with a staff person. The same idea. The TrueLink card, she needs cash. I authorize you to use it, and I actually can have a card made out for whoever that person is, so that, you know, I can control it. And that's been a wonderful resource for me. And many daily money managers use it now.
That's fantastic. It's called TrueLink.
TrueLink, yes.
T-R-U?
Yeah, TrueLink, and it's TrueLink Financial, and it's easy to sign up. It costs $10 a month just because of having, but you put funds on it and you use them up. You can say where they go. Like, for instance, there are some people who would spend all their money at a bar. And so you can shut that off. You can open it to drugstores or to, you know, food stores, restaurants, and usually limit it. And that has been, for people who want something with them, they like cash, but they're willing to go with a debit card because they know they can get cash. That has been a lifesaver.
That's fantastic. And it's something very specific that we can use. Thank you for
Yes.
that. I want to touch where, oh, geez, we've been going almost a half hour already. I want to touch on scams for the elderly.
Mm-hmm.
They are more prevalent, it seems, by the day,
Yes.
at a time where we're all feeling way more vulnerable, and certainly the elderly are. Talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing and how in the world do we protect the elderly, particularly when we are caregiving?
First and foremost, I believe in credit freezes. So, you know, and that's where you go in, and there's 3 credit bureaus, Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, and you're able to go in annualcreditreport.com, and you're able to go in, and not the ones that you have to pay for. This is free. And I encourage with my clients, I get their credit reports. I start off by making sure that we have a clear slate, that there's nothing that looks unusual, or, you know, so I like to make sure that that's happening first. And then if there's not a need for credit, like if they're not going to purchase a car or if they're not going to purchase anything, I would recommend having a credit freeze put on all 3 of the credit bureaus, so that no one can open up new cards in their name, you know, that type of thing. I would start with that. Then I would put alerts. If they have a online bank account, I would have alerts put on that, so that all my transactions that happen in my account, I see. I get a little notification. So if I go in and buy something, I get notified that my card was used. So you can do that and right now the banks or financial institutions have it for a trusted individual can actually be able to see the account and see what's happening without being a co-signer. Because that was not, you know, you don't want to be a co-signer necessarily if you can avoid it.
I imagine there's a vetting process, though, to be okayed for that kind of role on the part of the bank for a trusted person.
Well, they have that, you know, they want to know who you are and all that, but it's not like it is if you're a co-signer, you know, and what I think people are doing these days, and financial institutions are saying, we know that a lot of people have cognitive issues, and we know that we need to be able to have a backup for them. And so even Social Security is doing that. You know, who do we contact if you're not, you know, if we don't hear from you or there's a problem. So more places are doing that, and you can ask for that. Can I be a trusted person on this, you know, on this account? You know, a second person on this account. Many DMMs actually are able to do that as well. But we have the insurance and we have, you know, we're vetted, that type of thing. But I need a family member or a family friend who is trusted. Because many scams, much of the fraud takes place, unfortunately, with family.
Yes.
With family.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense where financial institutions are giving you the third, fourth, and fifth degree when you're trying, like Susan, when you're trying to get information about your parents, and they're saying, and you're feeling like you're the criminal, because what? I mean, you can prove who you are and what you're doing. And how can people who can't do all that still manage to find ways to get money from these accounts that they have no business doing? I mean, that's ridiculous. And DMMs talk a lot about that the people who really need access aren't able to get access, and the people who should never, you know, be able to have access are just, you know, kind of like the dark web. They're just trying out Social Security numbers and phone calls, really teaching our loved ones not to pick up the phone, not to answer calls that they don't, you know, recognize. And even if they think they do recognize the 608 area code, now the hackers are getting so smart, they'll use those local codes, you know, to get information.
And the calls where they leave messages that you are being sued by such and such, you need to call us back at 888, whatever have you. Or, you know, the police have received a notice, whatever. They sound official.
Very much so.
And they are so extraordinarily scary. How do we protect, aside from saying, don't answer your phone or don't have a phone, right? How do we as caregivers help them understand that it's real, that it's serious, and that we're simply trying to protect them, not keep them away from an opportunity or sending them to jail?
There are all kinds of blocks you can put on the phone. And so an opting out of, you know, the opting out registry, using that, but you can actually maybe work with the phone company to block many calls except for certain numbers that come through. And that's how some people handle it. They just have blocked the calls. And they only are able, you know, and they talk to a neighbor, they talk to a friend, and maybe someone at their, you know, their favorite restaurant or whatever. They call them an order or something, but and they aren't able to call out.
Great advice. I want to touch on one more thing, and then I want to open it up to our guests who are joining us tonight.
Sure.
One of the things that Mom used to do when Dad was still at home, but obviously cognitively incapable of understanding a lot, he would gather mail solicitations for charitable donations. And they would argue terribly about the $25 he wanted to send to, you know, the Rotary or the Kiwanis or, you know, Little Sisters of the Poor, whatever that was. He felt that was his responsibility. And Mom did not want him writing those checks. And oh, by the way, we all know every time you write a check to one, you get 10 more. So she would literally intercept the mail, collect it in garbage bags. And then when she went to play golf, she'd dump it in a supermarket dumpster. How do you advise caregivers to deal with a situation like that?
I mean, there is the do not, you know, the registry that you can opt out of those kinds of solicitations, but they still keep coming because people want to still keep writing checks. And so when I'm able to intercept the mail for my clients, I do. And then what I do is maybe 2, 3 at the most. These are the ones that we have checked out. And particularly if there's real cognitive impairment so that they aren't questioning me. Sometimes they'll question. I know we have more than that. You know, this year, you know, it's been tough. It's been tough. But there's 3 here that we have. Which one of these 3, maybe 2, can we use for the charitable contributions this year? I really do that. I mean, because it's too confusing. For one client, though, she wanted me to catalog them. She maybe got 40, 50, 60. And so I put them all together, and we realized that there were many duplicates, triplicates, right? Because they didn't get money, so they keep. And so I had a duplicate pile. I opened everything in a duplicate pile, and then I started realizing the duplicate pile could be the pile that I would put anything and everything that really wasn't needed. And we got down to 2 or 3, and I said, all of this has to go. And she was okay with that because it was in the duplicate pile. I mean, just kind of working with people around what is it that maintains their integrity, maintains a sense of independence. I mean, one of the great things about being a DMM and a social worker is that I'm always encouraging and supporting my clients' independence. If they can't figure out what they want to write on the check, I may help them with the check, but they put it in the envelope, they put the stamp on. Sometimes I've had to redirect them. No, it's upside down, but we'll do what we need to do because they can feel good. And I'll make sure I nail it. No, I'll mail it. It'll get there faster because I'm going right to the mailbox here. So I'm able to kind of cut through some of that by being creative, and not saying no. Let's look at another way of approaching this. I think when we kind of cut people off, that's when we have problems. No, you can't put that in the mail. You're writing that check wrong. No, that can't go out. No, you can't pay that bill. Sure, we can do this, but we need to kind of do it in this way.
Well,
and that has been helpful for me.
Absolutely. And demeanor on the part of a caregiver, a daily money manager, especially when you're dealing with something as sensitive as money.
Yes.
I think that is just critically important to all of us to understand. When we're tense, when we're unsure of ourselves, and when it's money, I think that's kind of like the perfect storm for bad behavior. So
it very much is.
How can we as caregivers, first of all, recognize that, and then sort of gather ourselves and recognize that how we present is likely to have an impact on how this particular exchange goes? What tips do you have for us in that regard?
For some of the folks, I just say, is this something you actually feel comfortable doing? Because some of the tenseness and the concern is comes from people just not feeling comfortable managing money. And if that's not something, that you're comfortable doing, get some support with that. It doesn't have to be a daily money manager, but it could be someone at the bank, someone who can help with this so that you're reconciling your parents' checkbook. You might want to pay an extra fee for that, but you can do that. Many financial institutions will help with that. And don't be ashamed to ask. So first of all, realizing some of that anxiety and that tenseness comes from not feeling comfortable doing it. Like my sister, that's not what she did well, but she was so good at so many other things. And so we can talk about, how about we divide some of those duties up? So first thinking that way. But if it's something that you are comfortable with, kind of check your judgment. Maybe what the parent wants, like that trip that they can't afford, isn't something that you would buy, that you would pay for. It's their money. Remember that it's their money and their right to spend it the way they choose, as long as they're taking care of the basics. So you got to check your own judgment, kind of, I call it at the door, your own stuff. And then what is it that would benefit them? How is it? And try to have that empathy. And I always think about, how would I feel if someone said to me, you no longer can write your own checks, or I need to watch over you when you use your debit card, or I can't trust you with cash. I mean, I would feel devastated. And so I take that with me when I work with anyone, caregivers and my clients, and talk about, I know this is hard. I would feel awful, but we have to make sure that your mom or your dad or your loved one is safe. And so on a limited basis, we'll use a TrueLink card, or we'll budget this way so they have some access, but not enough to get them in trouble.
Absolutely fantastic. You just triggered like 14 more questions. I'm going to stop.
Okay.
up to the rest of our participants here. If you have a question, please unmute and fire away.
Sure.
So I have a quick question for you. First of all, I have a comment. What a gift you are to your clients and anyone else that you serve. Seriously, the mentality that you bring to it, the compassion that is just innate in who you are and how you speak. You have very honoring language, and I have a thing about language when you're working with seniors. So, so first of all, I need to make that point. Second of all, the vast majority of the families and the seniors that I have worked with over many, many years absolutely have the best interest of their loved one in mind. They are trying to do the right thing. Sometimes it's hard to figure out what that is, as you all know, I'm sure. But every once in a while, and this is the outlier, there is someone who is just making sure they're watching out for their inheritance. So help me understand your thoughts or your perspective on how to work around that or through it.
I've actually had to do that a number of times. I had a client with a grandchild who would only come to visit if she could get a check written out. And she threatened that she wouldn't come if she didn't have enough money for her grandchildren. You know, I talked about that being extortion. Yeah, I said for the favor of just spending time. And so I said, if that continued, then I would be contacting the authorities. So if she wanted to visit with her grandmother, she could. But as her daily money manager, this is how much she could afford. And so I had to just hit it kind of, you know, square on, because that's where she was. Others, not so intentional. They just feel like it's an entitlement thing, and a sense that I'm going to get it anyways. So I've had to have kids not drive the car, not take the keys. Grandma could still drive, but the kids would say, I'm going to inherit the car anyways. I've had to have a real strong conversation and say, no, it's not okay, and explain why. It's called an inheritance. It's not something you have right now. The person is still alive. So, but the thing is, what I have found is the older adult, my client, will say, well, I don't think I want to stop them from taking the car because they need the car. I said, well, then that's your choice. And as long as you're saying it's okay, I'm good with that. But if you are feeling coerced in any way because they are your caregiver, I think we need to have that conversation. And then there's some things that I realize I have no control over. You know, I can lay it out there, and I can feel like they are being taken advantage of, the client. But if they're choosing to, it is their free will. As long as and I really make a judgment here. Sometimes I call in a colleague and consult and say, do you think that because of their cognitive capabilities right now, that maybe they aren't making the best decision for themselves? Or do you think that they still have that capacity? So sometimes I'll call in their state attorney, and I'll work with the team. And they may say, Barbara, no, they're still able to make that decision, even though we don't agree with it. And I state that. And I tell the person, you are taking something that isn't yours yet. And you're doing so, you're being allowed to do that. But just remember, if you get to that point in your life, how that will feel when someone does that to you. I lay it out. And if they choose to at that point, I feel like I've done all I can do.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny though, the ones who are not intending to do anything like that, just don't know. I just love to say, it's not something you've inherited yet. And that's why you could not use it.
That's
the
a
family
good perspective. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Just something that, and I use humor sometimes. I'll say, I know you wanted to have that car, but it's not yours yet. Who's paying the gas? Who's paying the insurance? And who's paying, you know, whose title is it in? Let's switch the title to you and see how that goes. And you be responsible.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I can't afford that. Well, then you can't afford to drive.
Great advice. Liz, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. So I recently, my mom is 84 and she's in really good health. But she's starting to get a little foggy in making decisions. And that's something I recognized just in this last year or so.
Uh-huh.
So I actually read the book called The Other Talk by ARP, which I found really useful. And I actually had her and my brother, who's a tax accountant, read it. And then the three of us got together and talked about, some things that she might want to think about regarding her finances. And then she does have a financial advisor. So we met with the financial advisor a week ago. It seemed like the meeting went really well and that, she's got some money, not a lot, but some money that she didn't realize she could do anything with.
Okay.
But her big concern is, what if I have to go into assisted living or a home or dementia care down the road? And we also talked about funeral pre-planning, and she's like, well, I know somebody that pre-planned their funeral. And then when it came to the time for the funeral, they still had all these additional expenses. So she's feeling like she needs to hang on to this money still, even though she was assured that she could do, that we didn't want it for an inheritance, that she could do anything she wanted with it. Is there a way to deal with those concerns?
Yes. I actually have clients. I work with different funeral homes, and I just have this is from Crest, and I've used Foster, and we have burial trust. Money put aside, prepaid burial, all that's done. And the money, in this case, it turned out to be about, because she just wanted cremation and simple, and it's all paid for. The plan is all there, and it's done. So that's something that it can be taken off the person's mind. It's prepaid, taken care of, and then she doesn't have to worry about it. That gives so much relief to people, that in itself, because they hear funerals costing $10,000, $15,000, and it doesn't need to do that. It doesn't need to cost that much. It can if you want to pay that and pay it and prepay it, but then you don't have to worry, because as costs go up, your prepaid does not. It is done.
Okay.
That's one thing.
So you're saying that if you prepay for a funeral and she lives for, say, another 10, 15 years, that you won't have to pay any additional because of cost increases?
Well, depending with the people that I talk to, if you have the burial trust, yes, because you've locked in that price. You've paid ahead of time. And what's nice about it is because you might say, in 5 years, I said it with Crest, but I want to go somewhere else. That money can go elsewhere. Funeral homes cannot keep it.
Okay.
So, yep. So I really recommend that.
Okay. And then how about the whole nursing home or retirement home or whatever you call it issue? I've heard stories where it can cost, $10,000, $12,000 a month, depending on the kind of care you need. That's frightening to a senior.
Yeah. And for the most part, what happens is people try to have enough money that they can afford to pay privately, for a place. And then once those funds are depleted, because then you got the medical assistance and the pay down, spend down, where, the 5-year look back. So they look and make sure that you're not trying to give money away, just to get on medical assistance. But having someone work with you on that, and aging, just checking out, the ADRC works really well with folks, but estate attorneys do as well, and financial advisors are good with that as also, and they can help with planning that out so that you have enough money to pay. And then and the thing is, once you are in a assisted living, and hopefully if it's going well, you would stay there. And then as your money was depleted, you would just go on medical assistance and they would take the rest. Medical assistance would cover the rest. And your services wouldn't change, the things you would still be there in that place. But I have found that people who have done it that way, there's always something that comes up. The place goes out of business, something else happens. And so you really should work with someone, a senior care advisor, who can help you with that. And I'm actually working with Claire, worked with a client, Oasis Senior Services. Yeah, so I just talked with her today because I have a client who's in one facility. We need to move her to another, but we want to make sure, and she asked about what she's able to pay. And we haven't, she had her home, sold a home, so she has enough for at least 2 to 3 years. But you're right, people are afraid of that. And so sometimes people step up, the adult children, and say, you will live with us. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. We will make sure that we provide for you. But that's a hard one. That's a hard one. What happens if there's, the Alzheimer's and dementia and they need additional care? And for some people, they do like what my sister did. She promised my mom she could stay home. My mom died at home. But she didn't have dementia. It was her physical inability to manage.
Now, this is the theme really that runs through all of these conversations, is how do we alleviate the greatest concerns? How do we, and that's why we bring resources to this group, because if we don't participate in things like these and meet wonderful people like Barbara, we're just kind of, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. And that just doesn't help anybody. So thank you, Barbara, again, for joining us tonight. One last, going once, going twice for questions.
I do want to say to Liz, though, the long-term care insurance used to be the answer. But people are outliving what they were prepared to do back in the day. And so I have a client right now, and they're doing well with it, but it doesn't work for everyone. And some of the policies don't cover the places that they should cover. So yeah, but we keep on working with that. There are no easy answers, but thinking ahead like your mom is doing is so important. And knowing that for some people, it's being able to have, and I'll just wrap it up, it's being able to even visit a few places and know what it looks like and have a sense of, okay, if a few years down the line I need to be in one of these places, it's not so bad. For some people, Oakwood Village, and then it has a place where if I need more assistance, I can move toward that. But I can start in independent living. And so that seems to be helpful for people where they get familiar with, being out of their home in assisted living independently. And then as the need arises, they move in that continuum to more care.
This is near and dear to Adele's heart. This is the work that she did for literally 30 years. So that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, it is.
I'll go back and listen to yours.
Well, there you go. Thank you, Barbara. I want to close this by thanking everybody that joined us tonight. Those who will listen after the fact, you can find Barbara and the rest of the archives at susanamarshall.com. The schedule is there. The registration link for the rest of this calendar year is there, as is Mom's Gone Missing, When a Parent's Life Changing Yours. Barbara, thank you. Thank you. One last closing bit of advice for us before we close for the evening.
I guess for me, I am so grateful. I can't tell you, just full of gratitude for the time I did have with my mom and the struggles and the challenges and all of that were hard during the time. But having had that time, and I think I can relate, Susan, to what I didn't have those difficulties, but there were challenges. And being able to have that time, so when they are gone, have good memories, that you've done the best you could at the time. We all fall short, but if you've done the best you could, and give yourself grace, then just be grateful for what you did have and what you still have in terms of memories. So thank you so much for letting me be here.
Yes, what a wonderful closing thought for us. Your beauty, your compassion just absolutely shine through. So thank you again, Barbara. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.
Well,
I appreciate it.
Yes, Tim Harrington from the Alzheimer's Association is our guest next month. So thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the evening.